Let's get this show on the road.
I need ribs to ease my day. I need to find time to cook them right. My papa said, can't hurry ribs. No, you just have to wait. He said ribs.
And now, at your service, here to help you cook and eat like royalty is the barbecue whisperer and hedonism evangelist from AmazingRibs.com, the planet's biggest and baddest barbecue and grilling website, Meathead.
Hello, everybody. Well, welcome back. I see a lot of familiar faces. Nice to see you guys back here again. If you have joined me in the past, you know the usual routine is I like to start off on a bit of a theme, perhaps a topic or a seasonal subject, and I thought tonight I would give you a short monologue on cooking brisket, the Mount Everest of BBQ. Probably the toughest challenge out there. And I'm inspired by it because I was interviewed this week by the Washington Post on the subject, because they're doing a brisket article for Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year holiday coming up. And brisket is traditional. Of course, the traditional Jewish way of serving brisket is it is done in a Dutch oven or a slow cooker in a liquid of usually Lipton's onion soup mix with a little ketchup or wine or something in there. If you do it right, it can come out quite delicious with a lot of sauce and tenderness. But of course, we barbecuers, and those of you who happen to be of the Jewish persuasion and want to stick with the tradition of brisket for Rosh Hashanah, are going to smoke it. So, I thought I'd talk a little bit about brisket on the smoker, because it is a problem. It's troublesome. It's probably the hardest to cook of all of the steer muscles, and that's because it's the pectoralis muscles, the pectoral muscles. It's the chest muscles. The pectoral muscles on the steer, the brisket muscles, bear about 60% of the weight of the steer, and steers don't have collarbones like we do. So it is the muscle that is bearing the head, the shoulders, and all of the weight from the midsection up. So it is a strong, tough muscle. And let's see if I can share an illustration here. Let's get this. There we go. I think you should be able to see. This is a simple illustration of what a brisket will look like. Now, this is what they call a packer brisket. It's a whole brisket, and it can run between 12 and 18 pounds. And it's made of two muscles. The lower muscle is called the flat. Technically, it is the pectoralis profundus. And on the upper muscle, which we call the point, because it kind of is pointed there, see? Sort of like a pyramid shape. The point muscle is the pectoralis superficialis. There is a very thick fat layer between the two of them, and typically when you buy a whole packer, there is a very thick fat layer on top. And that fat layer is a source of consternation that we'll talk about right off the bat. We'll get to it in a second. Now, when you buy brisket, you don't always have to buy a whole packer. 12 to 18 pounds of meat is a lot of meat. You're not going to just cook one for a family of 2 or 4. Often you'll get a portion, a hunk of brisket, which is sliced perhaps here or here. So you'll get either mostly flat or a combination of flat and point. 3 to 5 pounds is typical for a hunk of brisket. And the first thing you want to do is you got to trim it. And there's a couple of ways to trim it. All of this fat on the top. Now you notice there's very little or no fat on the bottom. All of this fat on the top, and it can be quite thick. It can be 3/4 of an inch thick. You should take most of it off. At the most, leave 1/8 of an inch. And the reason for that is when you put your rub on top of this, it's going to stick to the fat. And the fat, some of it will melt and will take the rub with it, but most of it will stay on the fat. And then when you go to slice it, there's going to be this very thick section of fat on top with all your rub, and the first thing your guests are going to do is they're going to cut off that layer of fat, and there goes your rub. The other reason to take it off is this fat cannot penetrate the muscle. Now, I know, we all know that fat is flavor and fat is something that we want to revere, but it's the fat that's within the muscle, the marbling, the striation within the muscle that gives it flavor and moisture. Fat on top of the muscle cannot penetrate because the muscle is 70% to 75% or more water, and fat and water don't mix. So even if you melt this, which a lot of it will melt in the cooking process, it cannot penetrate. So fat cap almost always should come off on brisket, on pork butt, on pork loin. Whenever you encounter this fat cap, it is not going to penetrate. It's not going to do you any good. The only time it can do you any good is if you've got a smoker or a grill that you're cooking on where there's very strong heat coming from down below, perhaps like a Weber Smoky Mountain. There can be a pretty good strong heat down below, although if you've got a water pan in it, that's going to mitigate some of that heat. In that case, you flip it upside down so the fat side faces the heat, and it will act like a bit of a heat shield, and a bit of it will melt off. But I'm telling you, if you trim it back to 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch, it'll shrink down to about 1/8 of an inch when you serve it, and people will eat that 1/8 of an inch of layer of fat, and you will get a maximum flavor and moisture out of it. So you're going to want to get rid of most of that fat cap. Now, there's another issue, and that's the fat between the layers here. Also, the fact that you have these two different muscles, and the angle of the muscles is different. Let's see if I can find another picture to show you. Stand by. I'm just going to go over here and shrink this down. Stick with me, folks. Where's that picture? I'm scrolling through an article on AmazingRibs.com called Texas Brisket, and it contains an awful lot of information about brisket, including a lot of what I'm sharing with you tonight. I'm looking for a picture that shows you, well, okay, here's a photograph. Here is a typical Packer brisket. Can you see that? Okay, let's get that big. That's a typical Packer brisket, sort of triangular shaped. All right, let's get rid of that stuff. Go away. There we go. Okay. Sort of triangular shape. Here's the point, B, and A is the flat. And the flat slices up into beautiful, gorgeous, even slices. The point is a bit uneven, and it doesn't slice as neatly. But the point has more marbling. If you've ever been to a great kosher deli like Katz's in New York, and you sidle up to the counter, what's the first thing they ask you? Fatty or lean? The answer is fatty. That's the point muscle, and that's going to be juicier and richer and more flavorful. Now, the lean or the point is going to make the prettiest slices. And so here you can see the grain on the flat running this way, but the point muscle, the grain runs opposite. It's kind of like, let me switch over here. See, I'm learning this technology. If you take your hands and you lay, let's see if I can do this so you can see it. Get the microphone out of the way here. You lay one hand on top of the other. Okay, here we go. There we are. Get this kind of... Okay, this is the point, and this is the flat. So the grain runs with my fingers. The point muscle runs towards the camera here, and the flat runs towards the camera, and the point runs almost perpendicular. It's not quite perpendicular. It's an angle. And you should know by now that to get the most tender meat, you want to cut against the grain. So it's a little tricky slicing. What a lot of competition cooks are doing, and I've been doing it myself lately, is separating the point from the flat. So now you have two big muscles. If you trim off most of the fat, you're going to trim off almost 20% of the weight, maybe more. And then if you separate the point from the flat, you're going to get two big muscles that are, the flat will outweigh the point a little bit, but not that much. And then there's that thick layer of fat in between. And you can remove that layer of fat now. And now you have two pieces that you can cook side by side simultaneously. And you can then offer your guests beautiful slices from the flat, or a little less even than beautiful but tastier slices from the point. And you can offer your guests the same choice, fatty or lean. What a lot of competition cooks do now is they'll take the point muscle and they'll cook them side by side, but then they'll take the point muscle and they'll cut it into cubes and put it back on the smoker and smoke those cubes, and then toss them in a pan with some sauce, and they'll make burnt ends. Now, the original burnt ends came from, okay, let's see if I can juggle an illustration here. Get this stupid thing out of the way here. Come on. Okay, I've got to get over here. Hang in there, folks. The technology is smarter than I am. Okay, so now you're looking at the brisket from the end, and you can see this is where you're going to get these beautiful slices, sandwich slices. But you can see it's often a little thinner here, and that thin edge and somewhere down in here, they're going to burn because they're going to overcook. Let's just say, if you go to a barbecue joint, they'll often offer you chopped brisket. Don't buy it. That's this stuff. It's going to be overcooked and dried. You want either the slices of lean or the slices of point. But this stuff is going to be chopped. But in the old days, it is rumored that it began at Arthur Bryant's in Kansas City, that these edges that got overly crisp were cubed and sauced and sold as burnt ends. Or often, actually, originally, they were just given away. And Calvin Trillin, the great author, humorist, once wrote that Arthur Bryant is the world's greatest restaurant. He's from Kansas City. And he was talking about in those days, they would give away the burnt ends because they were less than desirable. And I talk about all this stuff on the website. So, now, in many Texas joints, the only seasoning they use, this is Black's Barbecue here, and you can see here's the point. Let's get it up here. Let's get it up a little higher. There's the point, and here's the flat, and it's been cut, and you can see the fat layer in between. And you can separate them and dig out. Now I know Smoke Barbecue in Chicago, which makes some of the best brisket I've ever had. They actually don't separate, but they'll dig out most of the fat from in here before they cook it, and that's an option. Okay, so let's see. I wanted to show you the grain. There's some. Can you see that? Those are burnt ends. And boy, they are just like marshmallows. They're really tender. They're really juicy, really succulent, really fantastic. They are some of the very best barbecue in the world. And in fact, a lot of people, myself included, prefer it to any other portion of the brisket. Okay, this is a packer brisket that's almost done cooking, and this is the point, section B. And if you look, you can almost see the dividing line where the point muscle meets the flat, and you can see that I've kind of sketched here which way the grain is running. So you're going to slice this in this direction across the grain, but this you slice this way across the grain. So often it's best to separate the two, especially when you're slicing. This is at Smoke Barbecue how they slice it. He cuts that point right where it meets the point in the flat, and then he'll slice those gorgeous sandwich slices off the edges, the end, and now you're up to where the point is meeting the flat, and you can see there's a little bit of that fat layer, and he'll cut it again into two hunks, rotate the hunks, and slice in the opposite direction, and this is what you get. You get point and flat sitting on top of each other. That would be the fat layer running in between, but remember I mentioned he digs a lot of the fat out, so it makes a great sandwich that way. And then there's that chopped brisket from the overcooked edges. Don't buy it. And this is what a competition team will turn in. They'll turn in a little box. It's called the turn-in box of slices of flat and then cubes of burnt ends, and that's what they'll turn into the judges often. So that is kind of a summary. Cooking temp. Let's talk about that. I'm a fan of most low and slow 225. The hotter you cook, the more the muscle fibers shrink and the more juices it squeezes out. But a lot of competition cooks, starting with the great Myron Mixon, Hall of Famer, have been cooking in the 300 to 350 range without too much problem. They're also cooking with a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, and it's not the end of the world. I like to keep the temp down in the 225 range, and a full 18-pound packer, trimmed down, get rid of most of that fat, will come out around 14 pounds. That can take 12 hours or longer, and don't ask me how long per pound or anything, because it's almost impossible to predetermine. The meat will determine when it's done. You want to shoot for around 203 degrees in the center, and you look for what the experts call the wubba wubba. When you jiggle it, it goes wubba wubba wubba. It'll jiggle gently. Let's see, what else should we talk about in the brisket? Typically, when it's done, you want to take it off. You want to wrap it in foil or butcher paper and put it in a beer cooler, wrapped in some towels or blankets, and let it sit there for a couple of hours and carry over cook. The built up energy, the heat that's stored inside, will continue to cook, tenderize, and turn these. There's a lot of connective tissues in these pectoralis muscles, and connective tissue is tough. It surrounds every single muscle fiber. It wraps around like on an electrical wire, like the wrapping on an electrical wire, and that stuff melts and turns to gelatin. And so you really want to give it a chance to soften. Now I call that holding, as apart from resting. Resting is what people talk about when you're cooking a steak. You're going to cook a steak to 125 degrees. You're going to cook a brisket to 203 degrees. Very different. And the concepts and the philosophies are different. I'm not a big fan of resting steaks and chicken and pork chops and stuff, but you have to hold a brisket. It really makes a difference. And you can hold it until the temp drops down to 150 or so. Give it a couple of hours of holding, though. What else have I... okay, I think I've covered most of the key points, but let me go deal with some of your questions, and we'll look at your brisket questions first, and then anything else you got. You want to talk about smokers, you want to talk about steak. I'm here for you guys for at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and we can talk about anything you'd like. I see Ryan Lloyd is smoking St. Louis cut ribs right now. Yes, Ryan, my dresser drawers are closed. Thank you, Ryan. And he's wrapped his ribs in pork lard. That's an interesting approach. Joe Glunz remembers the good old Beverage Testing Institute. Yes, you do. My last business, I was in the wine industry. So I went from liquid food to solid food in the year 2000. Okay, Juan is asking my thoughts on a pseudo sear in the rear or reverse sear on a brisket to increase, deepen, and darken the bark. Yeah, this is a good. Now, a lot of people will start the brisket up, and if you're cooking at a low temp like 225, it will hit a point where the evaporation from the surface cools the meat at the same rate as the warm air warms the meat, and you hit a phenomenon called the stall. And it's a stasis where the cooling of evaporation equals the warming from the warm air, and so the temperature inside doesn't go up. And it just sticks there, and it freaks out rookies, and it'll stick there for hours until the surface dries out. When the surface dries out, then it will stop evaporating, stop cooling, and the interior will start to rise in temperature. And you can just go power right through that. Or, if you wish, what a lot of competition cooks do, and now a lot of people do at home, will wrap it in aluminum foil, real tight, so nothing will escape. Or butcher paper, wrap it real tight so nothing will escape, and that will stop the evaporative cooling, and as a result it will blast right on through the stall since it's not going to be cooling, and you'll cut a couple of hours off. The downside of that is you'll get a softer bark. So if you really love a crunchy bark, when that surface dries out, it's essentially like forming jerky, and it's actually similar to making jerky because that's got all your seasonings and everything in it. So you can wrap it to get past the stall, or just not wrap it and leave it. If you've wrapped it and you've gone through the stall, and then, when it starts getting up in the 190, 200 range, people will unwrap it. And as soon as you do, it starts cooling right away because it starts evaporating off the surface. And there's a lot of liquid in that bag, in that foil. And some people actually pour liquid in before they wrap it up, some apple juice or something like that. But that liquid could be the base of a sauce. You got to be careful. It can be very salty. And especially if you have dry brined or salted the meat hours in advance, which is always a good process. Salt will penetrate deep. The other seasonings will not. So salting it well in advance and then putting on your other seasonings and spices at any time is fine. But you can be careful about that jus that comes out. It can be a little too salty, and you might not want to use it. But if it's not too salty, you can use it as a jus or a sauce. But when you take it out, the bark's going to be softer. And so what you can do now is you can throw it back in the smoker, or just move it over to a grill. You got a gas grill sitting there, or even your indoor oven. Move it to a dry heat environment. Crank it so that you can dry off the exterior and get a firmer bark. And that's always a fun practice. Mr. Bones is in the house. Good to see you, Bonesy. One of our favorite members of our Pitmaster Club. Kevin Holmes Liddell says fat isn't flavor. It enhances and transmits flavor. Try eating some beef tallow and tell me how great it tastes. Well, yes and no, Kevin. Anybody who has eaten a steak with a nice fat layer on the outside, remember the famous line from the one of the comedy, I forget the movie. You're going to eat your fat? Fat can be very flavorful, especially if it's salted and It can have a lot of flavor. And in fact, a lot has to do with what it's been fed. If the steer have been wandering around eating sagebrush, you can actually taste sage in the fat, and it will affect the color of it. But fat does enhance and transmit flavor. You're right. We're both right, Kevin. Okay. Tim Bullard. I'd like to smoke 4 good-sized butts. Okay, we're on the pork butt here. Then after pulling it, add some mop sauce or apple juice. Then separate it and vacuum seal 3-person portions. Then freeze. Now, if I was to pull a pack out of the freezer and drop it in boiling water, when I make a sandwich with it, will the texture and other flavors still be on point? They won't be on perfect point. You're cooking leftovers. Nothing beats freshly cooked meat, but it'll be good. You don't want to use boiling water, though. Boiling water is 212 degrees, and it's going to really shrink things down. You want to keep the temperature of that water down. Your mouth doesn't want to eat anything much hotter than 160, 165. So get it to a low simmer, which is going to be 180, 190, or even less. If you have a sous vide circulator, you can put it in a bucket with the sous vide circulator and set it for about 160. Now you've got a very gentle heat. It's not going to squeeze out a lot of moisture. It's going to rewarm it, and it's going to be just fine. Nick Eichner from Canberra, Australia. Welcome. Yeah, Jean-Marc Demare says everybody in his house fights for the point. You bet. Dan Mancuso is asking, does separating the point and the flat reduce overall cooking time in a meaningful way? Yes. Cooking time is almost always related to thickness. So with the point on top, you have thicker meat. It takes longer for the heat to penetrate. Remember, 70% water, 75% water, plus fat. For heat to penetrate all that, water is a great insulator. It can take a long time. And in fact, if you've ever put a probe in and watched the temperature slowly move, you know how long it takes for the temperature from the outside to get in through to the inside. So if you separate it, you're almost cutting it in half. So it will significantly reduce the cooking time. Not in half, but it will significantly reduce the cooking time. And you get bark on all 4 sides instead of bark just on the top and the bottom. Now if you separate it, you've got bark and smoke ring on all sides. Smoke ring, by the way, doesn't have any flavor. Nathan Trissell's asking, do I think a choice grade of brisket from Snake River Farms is the same quality as a choice brisket from Costco or Sam's Club? Hard to say. USDA choice, let's see if I've got that chart. Stick by. I haven't abandoned you guys. Hang in there. Okay, this is from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and this is something similar to what the USDA graders use. They'll go up, and what they do is they cut into the rib primal, the ribeye section, and they'll look at it and they'll compare it to these photographs. They may not actually use the photographs because they pretty much know what it looks like, and they're different grades. So here we have let's see. Stick with me. Here's 2 samples. So remember, we're looking at the ribeye. This one here is labeled moderately abundant marbling. Now that marbling is going to contribute to the fat. The interior marbling, you see it? Not the surface fat. And then this one, you can hardly see any marbling. See that? And they're given these photographs, and the rookies may use the photographs. After a while, they don't need them. They know it by heart. So they're checking the fat in the rib primal. Of course, the brisket is on the exact opposite side of the animal, down by the chest. The rib primal is along the back. But the amount of marbling tends to be fairly consistent throughout. So if you get your grades are USDA grades are prime, choice, and select. Those are the three major ones. Now within choice, there's upper choice, lower choice, and so on. And there's some prime has got a little more than other prime. And then you have Wagyu, which is not a USDA grade, it's a breed. And most American Wagyu is a cross between the Japanese breeds and Angus. And it gets all very complicated. I have a detailed description of all this on AmazingRibs.com. So the question is Sam's Club or Costco versus Snake River Farms? Snake River Farms is one of the most reputable and best regarded wholesalers and retailers and purveyors of quality beef. They sell Wagyu, prime, choice, upper choice, lower choice. Sam's and Costco both have pretty good reputations, and I know a lot of competition teams lean on them. And I think it really is very variable. It could come down to not just the grade, but the breed. Is it Black Angus or is it another breed? And where was it raised? Cold climate, warm climate? What was it fed? So, I know a woman who has really been studying this, and she says it's a lot. It's going to be for the connoisseur. It's a lot like wines. Joe, if you're still there, Cabernet from Napa Valley Floor or Cabernet from Napa Valley Hillside, the West Hills, the East Hills. And so you get these variations, and that there is this level of connoisseurship. I know there used to be a restaurant here in Chicago, it's since gone under, but they had their own breeding stock down in Kentucky. They had their own bull and their own breeding stock, and all of their beef came from their own breeding stock, so it was really consistent. So Snake River Farms got a great reputation, and they're artisans, if you will. So if given a choice, I might choose Snake River Farms if price and everything else was equal. But I wouldn't be surprised if Costco or Sam's Club had something as good. Whether it's all as good, I don't know. Okay. Do I cook Wagyu brisket hotter than choice grade? I cook them all the same. I'm really, and I teach this on the website. I want you to master temperature control. Now, in the old days, if you were just cooking on an offset with logs and logs only, your skill as a pit master depended on your ability to maintain temperature and fire control and smoke and so on. And there it was a great skill. Nowadays, if you're using a pellet smoker like a Traeger or I have a Mac, then set it and forget it. But if you're using a Weber Smoky Mountain, it's a little trickier. Or if you're using a Weber kettle and even a gas grill, getting the temperature control and the smoke right, it gets a little tricky. So I want my students, I call this on the scroll here the Meathead Method. And by the way, that's the title of my next book, The Meathead Method, in which I describe all of my concepts and methodology, as well as there's some fun in there about the artistry of outdoor cooking. But my method is master 3 temperatures, 225, and that's for almost everything low and slow or indirect cook. Even a steak, if you're going to do a steak, a thick steak, 2-zone, indirect, reverse sear, start at 225, and then the next temperature is 325, which is what I want you to cook poultry at, because you need a little extra heat to render the fat and crisp the skin. And then what I call warp 10, or give it all she's got, Scotty. And that's putting it over direct infrared radiant heat to give it maximum searing and rendering capability. And if you can learn those concepts, if you can manage your temperatures so you can get 225 on a cold, wet, rainy day or a hot, sunny day, if you can get the 325 for your turkey on Thanksgiving, or your spatchcock chicken, then you're going to be fine. And then you want to get really, really hot if you're going to sear or get a great dark crust. So if you can master those 3 temps, you can cook just about anything. So when I'm cooking Wagyu or other, I'm going to shoot for 225. Kevin Holmes Liddell is talking about sous vide is a great technique for brisket. Yes, sous vide is a technique that a lot of brisket lovers swear by. Nathan Trissel is saying that Hasty Bake is having a scratch and dent sale coming up. Wow. Hasty Bake makes my favorite charcoal grills, which also work beautifully as smokers. Everything I've touched of theirs I give very high ratings to, and I have their 357, which is their top of the line, and oh my God, that's a fantastic machine. If they're having a scratch and dent sale, you may want to look into that. He says coming up soon. I don't know when. Maybe Nathan, if you get a chance, take a look at the website, and if you can come back at us with a date, we can tell folks. But or maybe you don't want to tell them because you don't want them to sell out before you get yours. But Hasty Bake is a really great brand out of I think they're Tulsa, Oklahoma. Just really great products, and I'm really a fan of them. Nice people there too. Okay. Mr. Bones asking where you can see the Q&A stuff. It's not showing on his YouTube screen. Gosh, I have a special dashboard, Bonesy, that I'm using for my broadcast. But somewhere over there on YouTube, maybe somebody can, well, he won't be able to see it. Maybe somebody can tell us how he can get the question and answer and comments from the Peanut Gallery so he can see those. I'm simulcasting to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and God knows what else. So I'm going to be seeing comments here, like that Hasty Bake one came in from Facebook. So I'm seeing them from all sources. Barn is asking, is it true that collagen starts breaking down at about 180? I wish I could memorize all these numbers. This is a really handy thing. It's a refrigerator magnet, and this is the latest version. We just printed up, I think, 5.3, and it's got like 82 key temperatures on here. And collagens start melting as low as 160. So there you go. Collagens start melting as low as 160. And it'll probably have a lot to do with what kind of animal and what it's been fed. So it's not going to be... Remember, we're talking animals, not widgets. This thing, by the way, hopefully in the next week or two, it's been on Amazon, but we're going to start offering it direct from our website. It's a magnet. It'll go on your fridge. And I've got one on my one of my grills outside. It's been out there in all kinds of weather for about 4 or 5 months, and it seems to be holding up pretty well. It's supposed to be all weather, but you know that nothing's all weather. So we should have it on our website shortly, and you can order it direct from us. The latest version. We've been selling them wholesale to the folks down at Grill Grates, and they have been selling them on Amazon exclusively. But the latest version is what we'll be selling. And we just ordered the latest version, and they're just coming in this week. So, okay. What's the difference between Montreal smoked meat and pastrami? Well, hey, we're talking brisket here. people will argue that the original pastrami was made from navel, which is a little further back from the brisket, but most of the great delis are making it from brisket now, and it has a particular dry rub. And I have a recipe for what I call close to Katz's Deli. Katz's Deli in Manhattan is just absolutely awesome pastrami. Many people agree with me that it's the best. Some people will argue that Second Avenue or Brothers and Sons, or what, I forget their names, or some outfit in L.A. is better. But, I don't think you're going to get much better than Katz's. And I have studied them. I have studied them. I have gone in there and watched them, and I have tasted it, and I have dissected it. And the rub I use is really close. And if you follow my recipe, you're going to make fantastic, unbelievable pastrami. And if you ask me, pastrami is the ultimate version of brisket. I just adore pastrami. And Montreal smoked meat is a similar concoction. I think the rub is slightly different. The process might be slightly different, but it's a very similar type meat. I absolutely adore pastrami. And you can make it yourself at home, either starting with brisket, or you can take the shortcut and buy a really good corned beef and convert the corned beef into pastrami. Joe Glunz is saying he prefers sous vide for leftover barbecue and sous vide are really good together. I'm with you. Brad Ledwith. What's in the glass tonight, Brad? Brad's a wine drinker. I'm still waiting for your cookbook, Brad. I'm drinking. Of course, an old fart like me is drinking something named Eisenhower, spelled differently than President Eisenhower. It's a Columbia Valley, Washington State, Cabernet Franc, 2018. It's one of my house reds. I buy it by the case now. Very nice. I think it's about $15 a bottle. Kevin is saying that they often use cameras now to grade beef. Not all of them, but yes, there are cameras now that can grade the beef faster. Some might argue better. So yeah. Oh, yeah, Brad's drinking Howell Mountain, of course. Brad is a financial advisor for LPL, and so he can afford Howell Mountain. Oh, Scott Bills, how nice of you. He's saying thanks for all the knowledge I've shared. He's stolen and shared with many people and pointed on the website. He mentions my Big Bad Beef Rub, which I use on a brisket. I have teased you. We finally know. These things are coming off the assembly line now. This is the Tuscan herb poultry. We have smoked red meat, and we also have a pork rub. They're based upon some of the recipes you know and love from AmazingRibs.com, but there are major differences in the ingredients. And the red meat and the pork rub, many of the ingredients are smoked. So if you're stuck indoors in winter, you can still get a little smoke from the rub. I got to tell you, all my life, I have been a salt and pepper guy on my steaks. And if you come near it with anything else, no garlic, no nothing. In fact, many of the times I don't even want pepper. This red meat rub, I won't cook a steak without it anymore. My wife won't let me cook a steak without it anymore. Hamburgers, it's just awesome. They'll be available. We are making them available now to our Pitmaster Club members only, but we'll make it available to the general public starting around September 15th on AmazingRibs.com. And I'm very proud of my work, very hard on them. And we will have a sauce also, which is really nice, a Kansas City style sauce with a secret ingredient. All right, what's the best way to prepare? Dreadius. Best way to prepare steak sirloin for restaurant usage, preparing the meat and storing, marinating, grilling at last. Gosh, that's a really tough one. Depending on how many you serve, you really might look into sous vide. The beauty of sous vide is you can take tonight, all of the steaks you're going to cook for tonight at around 4 o'clock, and bag them up, throw them in the sous vide bath, set the temp for 130, which is medium rare, and walk away. And 2 hours later or less, they're at 130 perfect. And then as the orders come in, you pull them out, throw them on a hot griddle or a charcoal grill or a broiler, and sear them off, send them out, gorgeous, tender, even color throughout, exactly spot on. And if somebody wants it well done, then you can leave it on the under the heat a little longer, or you could have 2 baths, one for 130 and one for 140 or 45 or whatever. And that I think that makes an awful lot of sense, especially for sirloin, which is not always the most tender. What a lot of restaurants will do now, though, still the classics, is they have really super hot broilers. One of my favorites had a broiler above and flame below, gas, flame above, flame below, and these were super hot, and they had it down pat. They were serving about 3/4 inch prime steaks, and they'd slide them in there, and they knew exactly the timing. They'd come out, and they were absolutely, utterly perfect and gorgeous, and they got great sears from those broilers. Okay. All right. Michael Goldman is saying the USDA, for example, says 145 for pork. Whether you need to go that high, could you comment the effect of low temp, keeping the protein in the temperature for a long time? Ensuring. Okay. USDA understands that knowledge of cooking is very poor in this country, and everywhere. And they want to make sure that you eat safely, and that our food supply is not always perfectly safe. So the temperatures that they recommend are the temperatures that, if you follow them, you're going to be perfectly safe. The USDA says 145 for a steak. That is medium. It is almost well done. Well done is almost 150. 130 to 135 is perfect medium rare, and that's what most people prefer. It's its most tender, it's most juicy. If every steakhouse cooked it to what USDA recommends, they'd all go out of business. If you know what you're doing and if you're handling it properly, you don't have to cook pork to 145. There is virtually zero risk of trichinosis in this country, and a lot of the top chefs will be cooking it to 135 to 140. It's pink inside. It's not rosy, it's just a little pink. And if you've never had a pork chop at 130 to 135, you've never had a pork chop. The general theory is that the bacteria cannot penetrate deep into a whole muscle meat. Now, if you're going to grind it, you absolutely have to follow the USDA recommendation. But if you're going to serve a whole muscle meat, like a steak or a pork chop, you're going to kill any bacteria that's on the surface almost instantly on the grill or in a hot frying pan. And there's very, 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 very low risk of there being any dangerous bacteria deep inside, especially if you get it from a good source and you keep it cold and it's not sitting around for a long time, and you don't bring it out and let it sit at room temperature for 2 hours. You take it straight from the fridge to the grill. I like to cook pork chops around 135. Okay, Ari Pomerantz is asking, once you use the Texas crutch for ribs or brisket, is there any advantage to finishing it in the smoker or oven, or is the oven perfectly acceptable? As long as you keep opening the beer every half hour. Good. That's great, Harry. I'm with you. There's a process called thermophoresis, and I discussed this on the website and in the book. There's the book over my shoulder, really good book. Thermophoresis, when you get out of the shower in the morning, your mirror is all fogged up. And the reason it's all fogged up is because the mirror is cool. And cold surfaces attract the small moisture particles in the steam. And the same thing happens with meat. If you take it right out of the fridge, do not let it sit at room temperature. When it's cold and you bring it to the grill, cold surfaces, just like the mirror, attract the particles of smoke. You will get more of a smoke flavor. But at a certain point, as the meat heats up and dries out, the smoke particles won't stick. When the surface is dry, less things stick to it. Smoke is little tiny particles, it's gases and water vapor mostly. And most of the smoke that you make when you cook just goes around and beyond and out and bounces off the meat. But if the meat is cold and wet, it's going to get more smoke. Well, at a certain point, when it's almost done, like you've done a brisket, and you took it up to, say, 150, and then you wrapped it in foil, the Texas crutch that's called, and then you put it back in and took it on up to 200 or 190, and then you unwrapped it. It's going to be wet, but it's pretty warm. Not a lot of smoke is going to adhere. It's pretty much got all the smoke it's going to get. So if you want to bring it in and pop it in the oven, you can. In fact, once you wrap it in foil, it's not going to get any smoke at all. It's in foil. So if you want to conserve your charcoal or your gas or your pellets, throw your brisket on the smoker, throw your logs in there or whatever you're cooking with, get it up to about 150, 160, get the color nice and dark. That's what a lot of the top pitmasters look for, is the right color. When it hits that stall, wrap it in foil, bring it inside, pop it in the oven at 225 to 230. You want to take it up to 300, go ahead. It's not going to absorb any smoke inside the foil or the butcher paper. And when you're done, you can unwrap it and blast it at 500 to get yourself a good bark, or put it on broil, get the broiler going to get that bark crispy, and you're good to go. And I guarantee nobody would be able to tell the difference. Not me. Kevin, you stinker. What? Kevin is razzing me. There's a recipe called Cornell chicken, and Kevin claims, and there are some sources that support his claim, that it was actually developed at Penn State, not Cornell, but it is known as Cornell chicken, and I have not seen definitive proof. I actually even wrote to the inventor's daughter, and she has not responded, unfortunately. So the origin, Penn State or Cornell, is up for debate. What temperature do I cook my Penn State chicken at? I like to reverse sear chicken. I like to start it at 225 on the indirect side, away from direct flame. Gently warm it until up about 150 degrees, 145, and then when it's 145, 150, I'll move it direct over the hot side, right over flame, right over glowing coals. Get that direct infrared energy, not the other side where it's convection air, and that convection air is more gentle. Right over infrared energy, and sear it so that you get crispy skin, and I'll cook it there with the lid open so I can keep an eye on it, and flip it frequently so I get golden color on all sides. bring it up to 160, and I'm done. Okay. Well, I've reached most of your questions already. And we're coming up on the 1 hour mark. I usually go an hour and a half if the questions keep coming. So keep hitting me. I'm trying to think of other things. I'm trying to think of what's going on in the world. Any new developments, exciting new equipment, tools, toys, gadgets. It's not all that new, but if you haven't heard of it, oh God, I'm drawing a blank here. What's the name of the company? One of the companies has made a gravity feed charcoal grill. So it's got like a big tube, and you pour the charcoal in, and it falls down. Sort of the same idea as a pellet smoker, only with charcoal. And I'm drawing a blank on who manufactures it. Somebody help me. I bet one of you guys knows it. Getting to be an old man, and I can't remember names like I used to. Jean-Marc is saying that the Hasty Bake Scratch and Dent sale is September 2nd, so that's right around the corner. How do I like doing half chicken? Very much. Oh, you mean how do I like doing it? Same thing. I mean, the problem with chicken is if you cook it too hot, you're going to burn the skin before it's safe inside. And I got to say, of all the food out there, chicken is your riskiest. A few years ago, Consumer Reports tested 300 chicken breasts and found 90% of it had pathogenic bacteria. And half of those had antibiotic-resistant pathogens. So you absolutely, positively want to cook chicken to 160, 165. USDA says 165. I think 160 is safe, a little more juicy that way. So you start indirect. Remember, I've talked about this before, and the website's got it, the book's got it. It's one of the core concepts of the Meathead method. Always divide your grill in half. You have a indirect side where there is no flame underneath. It has just got warm air circulating. The other side has got glowing charcoal or gas flame. And that is infrared radiation. Infrared radiation is what you have when you stand out in the sun. And I know there's ultraviolet involved also, but there's more infrared than ultraviolet. You stand out in the sun, and that back of your neck is going to get hot from infrared radiation. You step into the shade, and you're out of the infrared radiation. So you've got a sunny side and a shade side. Your infrared direct radiant heat side and your indirect convection airflow side. Start that chicken on the indirect side, gently warm it so that it's safe temperature even throughout. Then you move it to the direct heat side, and now you can get that beautiful, crispy, dark, golden, crunchy skin, and you can finish it up to the perfect temperature using your probe, and you won't overcook it, and the interior will be even temperature throughout. And that's called reverse sear, and it's a great technique for thick steaks. Skinny steaks, you got to do hot and fast right over infrared. But thick steaks, over an inch, 2-zone cooking, start it in the shade, finish it in the sun. The device I was trying to think of, thank you, Michael Goldman, is the Masterbuilt. Masterbuilt is making a charcoal gravity feed. And we have a review of it. It's a bit of a mixed review. Husky, who did the review, found some minor problems with it, but it's a very cool concept, and you might want to look at it if you're shopping around for a interesting charcoal grill, although you can't go wrong with a Hasty Bake. Okay, Hanio says... he loves the website. Question about searing. I've heard conflicting things about keep flipping for searing or don't move it to form the crust we love. Flip. There's no doubt. There is no conflict. The old-fashioned, all the old cookbooks say lay it down and don't touch it, and it is not as good as flipping regularly. It will cook more evenly, it will cook faster, and you'll get a better crust, and you won't get this rainbow effect, which is you get a dark crust, then you get a layer of brown, then you get a layer of tan, then you get a layer of pink, and finally in the center, 1/3 of your steak is perfectly cooked medium rare. Flip, 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 and what happens is one side gets pummeled with infrared radiation. It darkens the surface, it gives you your crust, and before the energy has a chance to penetrate too deep, you flip it. And what happens to that energy? Instead of penetrating all of it, some of it bleeds off into the atmosphere. So you're really concentrating the surface. The concept is you cook the inside and the outside separately. And you cook the inside in the shade, in the indirect zone, away from the flame. And then you cook the outside over infrared energy, and the lid is up, and you flip, 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 flip. You're the human rotisserie. 1 minute per side, maybe 2 at the most. There's no question. We've tested this in side-by-side tests with thermometers, devices. The old rule of put it down and don't touch it. I won't say it's wrong. You'll get a nice piece of meat, but it won't be as evenly cooked. And there's no doubt about it. And Alton Brown agrees with me, and Kenji Lopez Alt agrees with me, and Christopher Kimball agrees with me, and Harold McGee agrees with me, and all the guys who really know. This is an era we are in of nerdism. In the arts, we have the Impressionists and the Fauvists and the abstract expressionists. We have all these art movements. Well, we are in the era of nerdism in food. And there is this echelon of people like myself who are nerds. And we're very interested in the food science. And there are a lot of classically trained French chefs who've been doing it one way for 100 years, and they make marvelous food. And they're never going to change. But there are we've got better tools, instant read thermometers. The new ThermaPen gives you a precision reading in 1 second. 1 second. Why stand there and poke it with your finger and guess what the temperature is in the inside? I don't care how good it is, your finger is. Stick it with a thermometer and know exactly without question. And we have devices we can use to test when we're experimenting. I'm a nerd. And so are the guys I just mentioned, Kenji Lopez Alt and Christopher Kimball, and the greatest nerd of them all is Harold McGee. His book on food and cooking is the great nerd haven. It is a scientific textbook, but it's a brilliant book. We know we've learned a lot of stuff. A lot of what our parents taught us, a lot of what the cookbooks that we bought when we were in college are wrong. Narcio Nick, is it worth it to pasteurize chicken with a lower temperature sous vide and then finish it on the barbecue? If yes, what temp do you like, and how long in the sous vide at that temperature? Okay, this is a really good question. I actually, if you're reading the scroll across the bottom of the screen, I have written a ebook on Kindle. Yeah, it's $3.99 called Sous Vide Q Made Easy, and it discusses all of this technique of sous vide combined with the grill and the barbecue and smoking and how best to go about it. But the key question here is, what temperature are you comfortable eating your chicken at? We know you can pasteurize in the 131 to 135 range for several hours. You can make meat. It's not sterile, it's pasteurized, which is just this side of sterile. You can kill just about everything in the 131 range. So you can cook your chicken at 131 and then throw it on the grill and sear it. The problem is you and your dining companions are not going to like that. You're not going to like chicken that is rosy colored, that is slippery, that has pink juices, and is kind of stringy. We eat steak at that temperature. I'm telling you, pork is really good at that temperature, or just a little bit higher, 135 to 140. But I don't think many people are going to enjoy chicken at 135 to 140, although it might be safe. I think that it becomes a matter of preference, and I think that you'll find most people will prefer it in the 155 or so range. So if you want to cook it at 130 to 135, 140, then take it out and throw it on the grill and sear it off and get that skin crispy. And it's going to be rough because sous vide is a very wet cooking environment. So your chicken skin is going to be really saturated. So getting that chicken skin dried out on the grill and crispy is not going to be easy. But you can. And once you get it crispy and dry, and you can try it at that temperature if you want and see if you like it. I advise you don't bother with all the seasonings before it goes in the bag. They all wash off in the purge inside the bag. None of them penetrate, only the salt penetrates. Definitely salt it before it goes in the bag. Don't waste your money on any of the other seasonings. Season it, and when it comes out of the bag, before the searing. Same thing for smoke. No need to smoke it before it goes in the bag. A lot of it will wash off in the bag. Just salt it in the bag, bring it up to the temp that you want, take it out, then season it, smoke it, grill it, or all of the above if you wish. Oh, Dan Mankisu just ordered all the rubs. Looking forward to using them. Thank you, Dan. I think you'll enjoy them. Please give me feedback. I'm very proud of them, and I've been getting really positive feedback, and I think I can tell when people are just sucking up and when they're giving me honest feedback. Steph Cummings, why is your pork butt always tough? Well, that's a tough one. Well, pork butts don't necessarily come in grades. I like cooking it at 225, but damn, that stuff can handle the extra heat. I mean, I've had great pork butts at 300. Now, do you mean tough throughout, or is it just on the outside? I mean, if you smoke it, you could get very good tough exterior, which we call bark. That is like jerky. It can be dry and hard. A lot of people love that, and that's when you chop it up and mix it in. People fight over those little shards of flavor. There's so much connective tissue and fat in a pork butt. I've never had a tough one. I don't know how. Why don't you come to AmazingRibs.com and go to the pork butt recipe, take a look at it, and see if there's anything in there that helps you. And if it doesn't, and it's a persistent problem, go to the bottom of the page and ask us, and try to tell us a little more than why is it tough. Try to tell us a little more about what temperature you cook it at, gas, charcoal. Give us a little more information, and we'll put our heads together and see if we can figure this one out for you. I just got a message from a friend. We're going Friday. There's a minor league baseball team in town called the Chicago Dogs, and their mascot is the Chicago Hot Dog. And of course there's a mustard bottle, not a ketchup bottle. It's a fun little ballpark. And Friday night is dog night. And we have a puppy we're training as a hobby. We train leader dogs for the blind. We're on leader dog number 7. And we have a little puppy, a 7-month-old yellow lab. So we're going to take her to the game on Friday night. And my friend is messaging me asking what seats did I get. Let me just give me a second here to tell him it just doesn't matter, because in those minor league ballparks you can get any goddamn seat you want and sit anywhere you want. I'll come back to them later. I don't want to distract. Okay, so let's back to our topic here. Stephen Pinsack is asking, what are my thoughts on the new Kalamazoo Kamado? Kalamazoo is one of the best grill makers on the face of the earth. They're out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. They're built right here in the United States, in Kalamazoo. They don't cut any corners. Everything is handmade, welded, fantastic, top equipment. And they have a new Kamado, which is, I think, kind of square-edged. I forget the name of it. But Max Good, who is our full-time grill and smoker tester, has one of them on his deck as we speak. And we had our weekly staff meeting today, and he said he is deep into testing it. And he didn't say whether he likes it or not yet. So I don't know. Keep an eye out for his review if you subscribe to our email newsletter, Smoke Signals, which is free. When he is done, we will announce that the review is online, and he is very thorough. He'll have a video, he'll have detailed cooking experience, and he'll tell you in detail what he thinks of it. Probably it's going to be a pretty good score. They know the guy who designs their units is very smart. All right, Steph Cummings says he wet brines them. I've never seen a need to wet brine, for one. So that could be an issue. I don't know why that would make it tough. Rub, smoke till 165, then crutch until everyone is starving. And he uses a smoke vault. He tries for 200, but it never pulls easily. Well, I don't know about the wet brine. I've never done that. I've never seen a need for it. Dry brine is enough, which means just salt it up the day before. One teaspoon of Morton coarse kosher salt per pound, or half a teaspoon of table salt per pound, and give the salt a chance to penetrate, which would be overnight, and then rub it up, smoke it until it's got a nice color, or 165, or hits the stall. Then wrap it tight. When you crutch, wrap it tight. And then take it up to 200, 203. I like 203, and it should pull easily. I don't know. Yes, Kevin, sous vide is 100% humidity. It is very, very wet in that bag. And, it's often overlooked, but there is a lot of liquid comes out in the sous vide cooker. Nathan Trissell's asking how I would use Cosmos Injection Moisture Magic for different proteins. I've never worked with Cosmos. I've worked with Butcher's barbecue injections. I don't know what's in Cosmos, but yeah, that's something I didn't talk about when I was talking about brisket. A lot of folks inject brisket and pork butt, and they'll inject it with everything from apple juice, or on rare occasions when I do inject it, I might inject it with just a stock, like a beef stock in my brisket. But these injections, the Cosmos and Butcher's Barbecue, have compounds in them that are designed to retain moisture. So that and they work. A lot of the competition chefs use them. I would just follow the instructions on the bag. Dan's asking, Dan Mancuso's asking if I still dry brine with the new rubs. people who have followed me know that I have always recommended when you make your own rubs that you don't put salt in them, so that you can add the salt in advance. This is a process we call dry brining. The salt will penetrate. All the other stuff won't. The molecules are too large. It can't penetrate. Don't believe me? Get a turkey breast or a pork loin, salt it, and then put every spice on your spice rack on that thing. Rub it on good, and then cook it, and then slice it. Make sure that the knife doesn't push the seasoning down in, and then taste a core sample. You will not taste garlic. You will not taste black pepper. You will not taste paprika. You will not taste sugar. You will not taste rosemary, thyme, parsley, sage. None of that stuff will go any further than a 1/16 of an inch into the surface where the cracks and crevices are. They're just too large. They don't penetrate. The same thing goes for marinades. Salt penetrates. Nothing else does. Not much. So, I do dry brine just about everything, which means I salt just about everything. I know a lot of people are nervous about salt, especially with blood pressure, but you don't use a lot. Half a teaspoon per pound of meat is adequate. 1 teaspoon at the most. Not a lot. Much less than you're going to get in a chicken McNugget. And now, so Dan's question is, there is salt in these commercial rubs for 2 reasons. What I just explained, there's not enough room on the label for me to tell people there's no salt in here, so you need to add your own, and you need to do it overnight because the salt will penetrate and this stuff won't. And I can't teach the concept of dry brining, so we have put salt in here. There's another reason. Salt is cheap. If you don't add salt to a rub, the price goes through the roof, and I can't compete. So we went easy on the salt. We're using. I have felt when I use these things, on occasion, I like to sprinkle a little extra salt at the table. And salt. You can always add it. You can't take it away. So you can use this like a dry brine, and I call it. The label reads. Poultry seasoning and dry brine, because there's salt in it. So you can sprinkle this on the night before, and the salt will penetrate. The rest of the stuff sit on the surface. Hanio is asking, do I have any thoughts about speeding up barbecue with pressure cookers and smoking in tandem? In tandem implies at the same time, I think. You mean in sequence. I have not done a lot of work with pressure cookers. They can tenderize. They can break down fibers. I suspect that if you pressure cooked and then smoked, it would turn out okay. It would certainly be a different texture. It certainly would be a different timing. If you smoked first, then pressure cooked, I fear that a lot of the smoke would wash off or be altered by the high temp in the pressure cooker. Experiment with it. Check back. Let me know. Charles Dykman is saying, I wanted to mention that with his pellet grill, turning down the temperature a good 20 degrees makes those temp swings far more easier to deal with. I'm not sure what temp swings you're referring to. But pellet grills should have little or no. I've gauged. My indoor oven. It's a modern new GE. The way those things work is you set it for 225, and it's almost never at 225. It goes up to 240. Then it drops down to 215, then it goes up to 240, then it drops down. So it averages maybe 225. And that's the way most cookers work, even pellet smokers. The difference is the sinusoidal curve, the peaks and the valleys on pellet smokers are very narrow. My MAC is something like plus or minus 5 degrees. So if I set it for 225, it's going to go 220 to 230, 220 to 230. That's a very tight curve. And somebody chimed in a minute ago, and I lost it. The name of the shokunin, the Kamado, the Kalamazoo shokunin is their Kamado, shokunin. And go to Kalamazoo Grill's website and look up their shokunin. It's a very interesting looking design, and it makes sense. Kevin Holmes Liddell says he uses a smoke tube very often. How much of a flavor difference is there between white smoke and blue smoke? The tube gives off white smoke. Yes. I haven't talked a lot about that. There is an article on the website. In theory and in practice, the best tasting smoke is what we call blue smoke, and it's practically invisible. The particles are so small that if you look at the chimney, you just see heat waves. You don't see a lot of smoke. When you get smoldering wood, you get white smoke, which deflects and diffracts light, so you see puffy white smoke. Blue smoke, or invisible smoke, has a better flavor, but white smoke isn't bad. I wouldn't worry about it. It's black smoke or brown smoke or yellow smoke that you want to be concerned about. They are full of funky, bad compounds. But the blue smoke comes from when there is actual flame. This is a question I get a lot. I have a gas grill, and I throw wood chips. I wrap them in foil, poke a few holes, throw the wood chips down and it smokes, and sometimes it catches on fire, and then I got to add more. And the answer is great. When it catches on fire, the yellow tip of that flame tells you that it is consuming and burning off the bad stuff, the stuff that gives it a funky flavor. And so you really want your blue smoke comes from when the wood is actually combusting with flame. When it smolders, it's starving for oxygen, and you're getting a lot more contaminants, and so that's why it doesn't taste as good. So you want to avoid smoldering wood, which is the wood that you get when you wrap it in foil or these smoking tubes and other things. But it's not bad. I mean, it's pretty hard to avoid in some cases. So I wouldn't sweat it. But if you're cooking with logs, you definitely want to work towards blue smoke. Okay, Bobby Granatier. I just got cast iron grates for my egg. In theory, will the temp increase on the cooking surface because it's cast iron? Well, you have just purchased... I am not a fan of an egg. For one reason I described earlier. I don't know if you were here when we were talking about two-zone cooking and cooking in the sun and cooking in the shade, and it is almost impossible to do that properly and quickly, moving things back and forth on a round Kamado. On an oval-shaped Kamado, it's easier, but on a round Kamado, it's hard to do that. And so I'm not a huge fan of round Kamados. They are superlative at smoking and at being an oven, like a pizza oven. But for grilling, I would frankly prefer a $30 hibachi in most cases. Not true, but I prefer a Weber kettle because I can get two zones easily. Cast iron grates will heat up, and they will brand your meat, and they will give your meat nice dark stripes. If you're watching this scroll on Facebook, just below your question is a question from Nathan Trissel, whose avatar is a steak with a classic grill grate checkerboard mark on it. That means those stripes are Maillard reaction, which is lots of flavor, but in between the stripes, it's tan. And that is not Maillard reaction, and you don't get Maillard flavor there. The ideal, let's see if I have it handy. The ideal, stand by 30 seconds. I ought to be able to find this picture quickly. Well, this is not going as quickly as I hoped. Now it's a challenge. There it is. Okay, let's see if I can share this screen here with you guys. Stick with me. Okay, get over here. Screen share. Okay. And now that thing is way up high. Let me go back to here and drag it down. We're getting there. Well, it's a little off the top of the page there, but you should be able to see. That is what I consider a perfect steak. Edge to edge mahogany color. You can't get that with cast iron. The way you get that is with little thin wires, and you flip, and you move it around. When you use cast iron, you're going to get those branding, and you're going to get that uneven color. This is Maillard reaction. This is maximum flavor. So I'm not a fan of cast iron, and I'm not a fan of round Kamados. And I explain this in greater detail on AmazingRibs.com. But the idea is two-zone cooking and all over Maillard reaction. Okay. Nathan Tristle, do I ever use fine pink Himalayan salt to add the salt taste the meats at the end of cooking protein? I use large grain salt occasionally at the table. There are a variety of large grain salts. I like to salt things in advance so the salt will penetrate. And when it penetrates, the salt alters the structure of the protein. It's called denaturing, and it helps the protein hold moisture. So I like to do that in advance. And if I do it properly, it doesn't need salt at the table. But on occasion, I'll do things, particularly potatoes and stuff, where I like those big grain crunchies, and I'll hit them with that at the table side. If you taste the Himalayan pink salt all by itself, it's got a distinct flavor. And if you taste other large grain salts side by side, you can taste a very mild difference. You throw them on a steak, and you're just not going to be able to tell whether it's pink salt or black salt from Hawaii. I think we make a little bit too much of all these fancy salts, and they're very expensive. First of all, let's get one thing straight. All salt is sea salt. All salt comes from the ocean. That's the only place they make it. Now, they may be mining it in Utah, but it was once covered with the ocean, and that's where the salt deposits come from. So all salt, sea salt. And in fact, USDA and FDA laws do not define sea salt. If you want to make a spice rub and throw any old salt you want in there, you can, and you can call it sea salt. No law against it. So when you buy sea salt, you could just be buying stuff that was mined in Utah, and they called it sea salt. Now, Himalayan pink salt comes from Pakistan, and it is pink, and it's usually sold in fairly large grains, and they're crunchy. And if you like that large grain effect, then it's a great for finishing salt on a steak or on vegetables, potatoes. I love the large grain salt, I don't make a big fuss over it. I want the salt deep inside. Does MSG penetrate? It's a linear molecule, but not like the ionic compound of salt. And of course, I'm seeing a lot of salt replacement recommendations using MSG. I'm not sure. I don't think it should, but it may break down. And if it breaks down, some of it might. I don't know. I'll find out. Nathan is asking, do I ever use Mojo bricks? I have used Mojo bricks, not in the pellet grill. I've used them on my charcoal grill. Mojo bricks are they're like little tiny shredded wood particles, sawdust molded into a brick instead of pellets, and they work nice. Bobby Granatier asks, what does amosphos do to meat? I don't know what amosphos is. I've never heard of amosphos. Are you talking about aminos? Aminos is like soy sauce, and it's got a lot of salt in it. Pellet grills lean towards more blue smoke than white smoke, do they? Asked Scott Bills. It depends on what temperature you cook at. The lower the temperature, you're going to get a lot of smoldering white smoke. The higher the temperature, the less visible smoke. It's a very efficient burn. So they tell you if you want a stronger smoke flavor, dial down the temperature, and then you're going to get a lot of white smoke, which will give you a stronger flavor. But if you want the, it's different than cooking with logs. But you if you crank it up to 400 or 500 degrees, you're not going to see much smoke. That's because it burns really thoroughly. Nathan saying that steak got him 6th place at an SCA competition. Yeah, it's one of I've judged SCA, and that's one of the things I hate about SCA, is the grill mark. They insist, you can't win without grill marks, and I know exactly how you got them. You use grill grates, and that's a brand of product called Grill Grate, trademark, and they make those magnificent, gorgeous grill marks. I think a better tasting steak doesn't have grill marks. But that's the way. And SCA also wants you to cook it to medium, which is pink, and I think that's overcooked. And I think the concept of steak cook-offs is a lot of fun, inexpensive. I've judged it, and I know I can cook a better steak with my eyes closed, and I'll come in last because it will not have grill marks, and it will be undercooked and disqualified by their standards. But I'll bring it in at 130 to 135 when it's more juicy and more tender than any steak in that competition. But they insist on pink, not rosy. Hano is asking about reverse sear for a turkey for Thanksgiving. That's tricky. You're dealing with a big piece of meat that has really thick breasts, thin thighs, light meat, dark meat, wings. Basic rule of thumb. The worst way to cook an animal is cooking it whole. Because, cooking a turkey, you're going to either undercook the breast or overcook the dark meat. And that's why you read all these crazy pieces about where people put ice packs on the breasts, and they wrap them in foil. And same thing with a hog. You're going to cook a whole hog. The shoulder needs to go up to 200, but the tenderloin and the loins are best at 135 to 140. It's almost always best to break an animal down and cook each muscle to its ideal temperature. And I've done that for Thanksgiving. And I've made absolutely gorgeous birds, and everybody booed me out of the room because they, as tasty as they were and beautiful as they were, they wanted to see Norman Rockwell Bird come out there. Now you can get away with it spatchcocking, but so I just take my turkeys and I throw them on either the not the gas grill, the Weber kettle or the pellet smoker. Lately it's been the pellet smoker because I'm busy doing a million things. I'll throw it on the pellet smoker at 325 and walk away. Spatchcock. And I don't get booed for that. Oh, Jean-Marc, yes, U.S. orders only right now. The company that is manufacturing them says they are going to be distributing all over. They have distribution in Europe. Are you in France? They have distribution in Europe. We just launched it last week, and they're only in the U.S. I'm sorry. Or maybe you're in Canada. Oh, Jason Pettis. Misfos is a phosphate blend sold by the company that makes Fab injections. Same basic product as Cosmos and Butcher Phosphate. Okay, I didn't know if Cosmos had phosphates in it. Butcher does. Phosphate seems to be the magic ingredient in these injections. I'm not familiar with the term Misfos, but the phosphates I know. Charles Dykeman says he likes larger briquettes, and he can get them from Royal Oak Food Service. I didn't know they had larger ones. That's nice. All right, I'm going to try to do this with a straight face here. Kevin wants to know if he injects brine into a turkey breast. Is that breast enhancement? I think it is. All righty, well, we've been going on for an hour and a half plus, and I'm an old man, and I like to get to bed early. So I'm going to excuse myself and thank you for your attention. I just wanted to mention those of you, I did brag a few months ago that I had made it into the Barbecue Hall of Fame, and their induction ceremony would be September 18th in Kansas City at the Kansas City Royal. I regret to say that if you were hoping to say hello and meet me there, I'm not going. I am an old man, and you may have noticed that there's this virus thing running around out there, and I'm just not real keen on the idea of, going through the airports and the airplanes and hotels and ballrooms at hotels and hanging out with a lot of people right now. So, and Missouri's a hot spot. So I'm sorry to say I'm just going to play it safe and stay close to home base, even though I have been injected and rejected and wear the masks. I'll stay home, and maybe I'll go next year. Hopefully next year we'll all be safe and sound and healthy and happy. And I'd like you to stay that way, and remember that the last Thursday, we do this every month on the last Thursday. So come on back next last Thursday. I don't know what my theme will be, but I'll pick something and we'll ramble on, and as always, take your questions. And I thank you for your very good questions, and it's always fun to see several of you come back on a regular basis. So we'll see you out there in the Ethernet, on the internet, and if you have further questions, come on by AmazingRibs.com and leave your questions on the website. Every page at the bottom has a place to ask questions or make comments, and my staff, I've got some really smart people, and I will try to answer them as quickly as possible. So, see you next month.
That's all for now, folks. Thanks for staying awake, and please visit AmazingRibs.com for the articles, recipes, and reviews mentioned in this chat with the Barbecue Whisperer and Hedonism Evangelist from AmazingRibs.com, the planet's biggest and baddest barbecue and grilling website, Meathead.
It's a